get the sense there just on Bitcoin specifically, say the strategic Bitcoin reserve in particular. And there's like two parts. There's two huge questions, which is one, are we going to like actually make public how much Bitcoin the America actually owns? And then two, are we going to acquire more of it, in the quote budget neutral fashion as indicated? Like we still do not have solid answers to those two core questions, right? And I think, in my mind, that's, again, it's not like I'm going to, again, like, oh, I expect an answer today, but like there ultimately has to be an answer to those questions in some short order, right? I don't think you can go, say, to the midterms next year without having given an answer to those two questions, right? Now, I have a certain view of what the answer should be, right? Yes, you should disclose how much Bitcoin you have, and yes, you should acquire more of it in a budgetary fashion. But if the U.S. government decides not to do one of those two, not to answer that fashion, I think it should explain why. Right? If they're going to say we're not going to ever answer the question of how much Bitcoin we have, that's their policy judgment, but they should explain like a rationale for why, right? And then if we're not going to acquire any more Bitcoin in a strategic, in a budget neutral fashion for the SBR, I want to hear a rationale. Right now, we're sort of in this limbo land, right? Where we sort of get implications, hints that they are going to acquire more Bitcoin. I think it is a very sensitive topic of like, well, how far and how fast and literally how. Right? There's lots of ideas on the table, but those ideas touch lots of different parts of the government, from Commerce Department to Treasury. And I think there's a bit of like Spider-Man gif of like, well, who's really going to do this and how? And then you got to get the lawyers involved. And there's a lot that kind of goes into that. And then you have to think about the strategic signaling effect of this and the market effect of this. And it's a big move. Like once you do that, you can't undo that. Right, that would be a dramatic shift. Once the government ever announces a net incremental buy of Bitcoin for the SBR, like I think it's hard to underestimate the like watershed moment that would be. Like that is a huge step. It doesn't matter even if it's like $1 million or some sort of trivial amount. Just the fact that they have decided, as a matter of national policy, they're going to buy more Bitcoin as a quote reserve asset, which is what this report says it is. Like they say the Bitcoin held in SBR will generally not be sold. Right, obviously the ones that are encumbered or have to be disposed as part of forfeiture processes, but they will hold Bitcoin in the SBR as a quote reserve asset for the U.S. government. That's what it says. And so the U.S. government making a affirmative step to acquire more Bitcoin as a reserve asset, like that's kind of a nonlinear jump, right? In terms of the U.S. government's approach. I think they're being cautious, they're being deliberative. Obviously, we want to push them and take that step for prudent national security and strategic purposes. And so I think they're just they're a cruise ship and they have to turn slowly. So I think that might be, there's no immediate TikTok on that. But the disclosure of how much Bitcoin we own, that could be done today. I think there's some complexities associated with that in terms of exactly like what's happened to the Bitcoin America currently has, how it's encumbered, how it was sourced, where the Bitcoin from different, government agencies actually, how the government came to own that Bitcoin, whether it was from intelligence activities or covert action or just early, acquisitions for small law enforcement operations that turned into massive stacks of Bitcoin. And there's a lot of potential things the government doesn't have to answer about how they got that Bitcoin back in the day. Again, you got to be transparent with the America's Bitcoin holdings. So I think there's no right now like explicit milestone that they're obligated to anymore in terms of like reports that are coming out. I think the next big move is going to be clarity, right? They've clearly, expressed this is the strategic policy priority for crypto this fall. They want to try to get that done. That's optimistic potentially, but I think now that they've got this report done, they want to, sort of lock in the victory on Capitol Hill. And then the question for me is, okay, what comes next after that? Right? If they sort of check the box, quote unquote, on stablecoins and market structure, do they see that as a done deal? And what remains for the SBR, both in terms of executive action and legislative action with the Bitcoin Act? We are, working that, right? To keep that a live policy issue that is ready to take more attention if clarity gets across the line.
Yeah, I think to repeat what Bo said in an interview, it was like our friends in the Bitcoin industry will be happy with the direction we take, which is obviously, kind of hedging to some extent. And he was also asked, how much Bitcoin do you own? And he said, I'm not at liberty to share at this time. So, I think that's a good flag to plant in the ground, which is, hey, how much do we own, and are you adding, and no more of the like, you all will be very happy, you know.
Do we think they know? Is the issue that there's like I totally am willing to believe that there is stuff that is awkward to disclose or we can't disclose for national security reasons or whatever. But do we think that the government like has the precise number?
Well, I mean, it's like, whatever number they have is precise. Is it accurate is a different so my understanding is that, the U.S. Marshal Service has the main account, right, for the certain forfeited, seized assets. There's also, apparently like custody accounts of seized crypto in the hands of like local field offices of the FBI and attorneys' offices of the U.S. Department of Justice. And those were never like properly centralized or like nationally reconciled. And so I think there was a very messy process of just going around all of these different pockets and be like, how much crypto do you have? And they go, oh, there's a guy, Bob, like you've got all the wallets sitting in the shelf over there. Like, can you like inventory how much crypto we got? And then Bob goes, what wallets are you talking about? And it's like, I could just imagine the kind of bureaucratic, incompetence or just like complexities and just actually trying to like getting an inventory, reconciling that, auditing it, and then just trying to like centralize that is a pretty messy thing. And so I'm not confident that they've really found all of America's crypto, right? I think they've probably found a lot more than they didn't know about, right, beforehand. And that might be part of the complexities of like, they found all of this other, they went to the executive order did not specify like, only, certain, it was like literally everything, right? So including anything that's held by the CIA, anything that's held by the National Security Agency, anything that's held by the Defense Intelligence Agency, anything that's held by, name your, 16 intelligence community agencies that could all have just, accumulated a bunch of random crypto over the last 15 years. And now they have to account for that. But that might be in some sort of special access program. And to just even be right onto it, there's got to be like 3 months of paperwork. And so just like, I do have a bit of sympathy for the like bureaucratic nightmare of just actually trying to inventory how much Bitcoin the government has. Like it's a messy thing.
Yeah, but I think in addition to the like national security stuff, I think it's plausible that part of the reason we haven't heard is that there is an embarrassing answer, which is we don't really know. And like these were not kept in an organized way. And like they may or may not be able to figure it out, but they're not like ready to like come out with a number.
I think it's probably a combination of that, right? Which if that was the case, they could just blame it on Biden, right? Anyways. And so I think there was definitely that case of just incompetence and just, the government not keeping track of these things properly. And I think there were even some cases of, like the US, people using spreadsheets for, with like private keys, just like in plain text. Like it's just, like pretty shoddy stuff, right? So like there is a certain just pragmatic, like good housekeeping element to the SBR requirement, which is that is America's Bitcoin. And it's potentially worth a lot of money for taxpayers. And you should treat it like with the same degree of, security and rigor that you treat, your obligation to be a good steward of the public purse. And if there are millions, if not billions of dollars just sort of floating around, like not being properly managed or custodied, like that just kind of offends me from like a good government perspective. And so it is like obligation, first number one of the Treasury Department to like, you're supposed to keep track of America's like, wallet, right? Like including our digital wallet. And, if you haven't been doing that, it doesn't look good for you. So maybe there's a bit of an embarrassment on that front. Like just it's so messy and they just need a lot more time to kind of clean it up before they're ready to kind of, present a nice ledger to the American public. So I think you're probably right.